welcome to another crafty video. This is going to be another one of those kind of a little bit hybrid videos where I'm talking at the beginning and then it's going to be sped up towards the end. But a couple of weeks ago I did a video showing you the Two Hands liquid acrylic markers with these beautiful brush nibs in a fantastic selection of colours. And today they've also sent me the black pigment liner set, and they're water based but they're also waterproof, and you've got 12 different sizes in here, and they're all a beautiful deep dark black colour, but you've got going from a small brush to two sort of calligraphy chisel kind of nibs, almost like a small bullet sort of nib, and then going from 08, 06, 05, 04, 03, 02, 01 and 005 as well, which are really fine lines. And I thought for this video to show these off, I'm going to show you how nicely they work over the top of the acrylic liquid markers. But I also thought it would be quite nice to bring in a stamp, and I'm going to try and not ink one area and then add my own kind of doodle to it, because I really want to. Andy Skinner did a post on Facebook a little bit while back when his robot stamps launched, and he was saying how like robots can be all year round and they can also be for Christmas, and I really wanted to try and put a Santa hat on one of the robots and maybe edit some other bits and pieces too. Plus also just normally with this stamp you might want to extend the ropes on the swing, so these pens would be great for that kind of thing as well. But I thought if we do some stamping where you miss a sort of area and then you can add your own custom sort of thing to it. I mean, whether it is changing something like this, which is a little bit more difficult to do, or whether it is literally just you know, taking a stamp like these beautiful Jane's Doodles ones and giving Santa a pattern on his jumper, or putting a pattern on the car or something. You can obviously do really simple things like that too, but I thought as a nice little video to kind of show you a different technique as well, and not just like here's a black pen, here's another black pen, here's another black pen. I thought I'd show you kind of how you can play around with them as well. But you know that I'm always using a fine black pen to add those doodly borders around, even around the perimeter of the card, around an aperture, around a sentiment, and then cutting them out. So I absolutely love doing this kind of thing anyway. So these are all of the different pens. They're a really nice pen actually, and they've actually, I don't know if you can pick it up on camera, or you can just about, they've got like sparkle in the black plastic of them, which is really lovely, and all of them say what they are on the top, so you can have them all in a pen pot and easily reach for which one you're looking for, or you could have some of them in the drawer and your favourite ones out, or you can keep them all in the little plastic wallet that they come in. However you like to store your things. I think I'm going to be keeping them in a pen pot so that I can always reach for whichever line point that I want. And they're also great for if you have stamped something and it hasn't quite come out perfectly, you know, having a fine black pen in lots of different thicknesses is brilliant for that kind of thing, because if you've stamped something that is maybe more solid, sometimes you can tell that you've filled it back in if you've used a fine pen, but if you've got something like the brush pen or the two chisel kind of nibs, you can fill in a larger area without it being so noticeable as well. So I think they're very useful to have in your stash. They're also a very good price too, and I've got another discount code for you as well, which I'll put down here and also in the description box below the video too. I think it is 20% off again, and they're a seller on Amazon, Two Hands, so you can get hold of them through my link to Amazon below the video as well. Yeah, so I have actually doodled a little sample of all of the pens, so you can see how it goes from this brush, which I was actually being careful with the brush and not pressing down too hard, but you can get even thicker lines with the brush as well. And then the next one is the sort of larger chisel, then the finer chisel. It's got a fine and then a slightly broader to it, so you can do sort of calligraphy. This one is the bullet nib, and then it goes down with the fine liner points. I'm never 100% sure what the numbers mean, whether it is 0.8 of a millimetre perhaps, and then this is like 0.1 of a millimetre, and that's 0.05 of a millimetre, I'm not sure, but those are the increments in the size nib. So really, really gorgeous selection. My favourite one that I usually use says that it is 0.4, but actually from looking at these, maybe it's because I've used it quite a lot, it's probably more of a 0.5, but pretty close to the 0.4 as well. So they are a lovely selection of different widths for using for all sorts of different things, as I was saying earlier. So let's have a look at how well they go back over the top of those acrylic paint pens that I was showing you last week. So which number shall I go with? Let's go with 8, so it's nice and thick for you to be able to see on the camera, if I can find number 8. The only one I haven't rolled around to look at. And it's this one. Okay, so we can just like add sort of doodles over the top of them. And that works really, really nicely. Just going on to like a square sort of swatch there. Or we can do what I was doing in the video a couple of weeks ago before I had these pens, and instead of using a biro to go back over the top, you can use one of these fantastic fine liners to add like your doodly styles over the top of something that you've coloured with those acrylic markers. So really, really lovely like that. Then I've also drawn out 2 hearts here as well, because I wanted to play around with water-based and alcohol-based. So I'm going to pick a Copic. I'm going to go with a yellow, and then I've also got over here just a random water-based product. This is a Jane Davenport Mermaid marker, just as something water-based. So first of all, let's test the waterproofness. I have let these dry just for like 5 minutes to make sure that they were nice and dry. I just did it just before I started filming. So let's, I might need to squeeze this, I haven't used it in a little while. So let's colour in this heart and see how well the outline holds up. And then also let's scribble over the top to really test how waterproof it is. Looks very good at the moment. We'll see if anything bleeds out as anything's drying, and then we'll do the test with an alcohol pen as well. Any alcohol pen will work the same as a Copic, but we can just colour up to that. Works really, really nicely. I'll use the chisel end and scribble over. And it might have budged a tiny bit on this, but there aren't that many points when you're colouring that you might scribble over a lot of lines, but not much. It's maybe a tiny little bit of bleeding, but really not much. And it doesn't actually say, you know, use them with your alcohol pens, but it's just the fact that they said that they're water-based. I thought maybe they're going to work without alcohol pens, and it looks like they do if you're just using them to fill in a pattern. Like I was saying before, adding a pattern to someone's jumper or a car or another, like a present or something that you might want to colour in later on. And you can see with the water-based as well, the outline's not bleeding, the ink is really nice and wet in there, and nothing has bled either. So they're definitely waterproof, as they say, and they look as though you're going to be able to use them really nicely with your alcohol pens too. So perfect for altering your stamp designs, which is what I personally like to use fine liner pens for. So what shall we do next? Maybe we'll get on to actually customising this robot stamp. Okay, so I'm going to take my stamping platform, which you can see has been well used because I keep a piece of scrap paper in the bottom of it, and it's covered in all sorts of different images from all sorts of different places. So I'm going to take the Andy Skinner stamp, and all of my writing is transferred on the back of this, but this is actually called Time Together, this one, and is one of his beautiful robot stamps. So I'm going to position that roughly where I want it. I'm leaving a gap deliberately so that I can show you how to extend the ropes of the swing. And then we're also going to play around with not inking all of it up and then trying to add some customised areas into there. So I want to hold my card into place by using my magnets, and then I'm going to pick this up with the lid and then move this over. Now I'm thinking, do I just want to put a Santa's hat on the robot, or do I want to add one onto the balloon and maybe even onto the bear as well, or is that going a bit too far? I think a Santa's hat onto the robot and then actually a sprig of holly onto the balloon. So I don't want a tiny bit of the balloon to come out, so I can have the holly going over the edge of it. So we're going to carefully use our ink pad, whatever kind of ink you want to use, whether you're going to use your alcohol pens, your water-based or your acrylic paint pens. And then we want to ink up everywhere that we actually want to stamp. So I definitely want up to where the ropes are to stamp, so I can just ink that up. Then I'm thinking I'm going to put the holly over here on the balloon, so let me just ink up part of the balloon. A balloon's not too difficult to draw the extra in if we don't stamp all of it, but because we're using a stamping platform we can easily just ink up that area again and stamp it. And then I think for the robot I'm going to have his Santa's hat being on the top of his head and then coming down this side. So if we maybe ink up the aerial as well, a little bit of the side of the ear and a little bit more of the hat, and I want to get his expression in there too. Hopefully that will be a good amount inked. Yeah, I think that's going to work. We can have his hat here and then sort of going off down the back of his head. And then we can have the sprig of holly coming out the top here. So we just need to make sure the rest of it is well stamped. Although, even if it's not well stamped, we could use our really fine pens to fill in those details, which is lovely. So a little bit more on the balloon, I think, just to make it nice and dark. Yeah, then I think that's pretty good. I might leave it there and work on it here so that just in case we feel like we need to stamp something back over the top again, we've got it all lined up still, so we can actually do that. And then I'm going to go in with a very fine pen, because if you look at the lines on this stamp of Andy's, they are very fine details. So I think a number 3 is going to be good for this. And first of all, I think I want to add my holly onto the balloon. So you definitely could do this with stamps as well. You don't have to obviously draw things with your hands. You could have stamped the whole of this out and given him a pattern rather than actually taking away some of the outline and adding something else to it, or the same with the balloon as well. So I'm just going to draw a few berries and then draw some holly leaves, and then maybe the other one can sort of come out from behind, and then we can sort of mimic Andy's style a little bit by adding a little bit of grunginess to the outline. That was Pumpkin yawning if you heard it. Just sort of making it a little bit more sketchy looking so it matches the rest of the illustration kind of style that he's done. We can also fill back in anywhere of the balloon that we want to be stamped back again, and anything that we missed with stamping as well. There was a line that went all the way up to the top here, so we can add that back in, maybe do a few more like dots and things to tie in the style. Okay, so we've added our holly leaves to the balloon. It's already made it a little bit Christmassy. Then we want to extend the ropes on here, so we can just sort of go with the same sort of thickness and then just sort of copy Pumpkin, copy how he's sort of drawn the rope, which is all sort of like diagonal lines going upwards, just to sort of fill the rope in. So you can easily sort of fill this in by having these different thicknesses, because some stamps use a lot thicker lines and some stamps use a lot thinner lines depending on the size that the artist drew them at and how big or small they've been scaled to. So it's really nice. Pumpkin! So it's really nice to have all of the different point sizes in the pack. So we can just sort of mimic the same thing again by... But it's not perfect at all. I'm literally just drawing in diagonal lines, but it blends in pretty nicely. I mean, obviously Andy Skinner's part of it is much better than the bit I've just drawn, but you know, it's quite easy to fill in those sorts of things. You can also put the lid of the fine liner pens on the end as well. I just have a habit of holding the lid in my hand, but you can put it on the end of the pen and it's nice and firm on there, so it's not going to fly off when you flick your hand when you're moving it. So for the hat on the robot, I must admit I'm not very good at drawing Santa's hat, so I'm not sure why I wanted to add a Santa's hat onto this when I know that I can't draw them very well. But let's kind of add in the fluffy part of the Santa's hat, maybe. If we get that drawn in, then we can give ourselves more of a guide of what we're actually going to do. So that's kind of like the fluffy bit, and then I'm thinking that maybe the hat comes up like this and then goes down the back of his head. See, I told you I'm not very good at drawing a Santa's hat, especially not when it's in a different sort of position. And then I think like drawing a pom-pom down here. Kind of looks like a Santa's hat. But the good thing is, because of the style of Andy stamps, because they're robots and they're kind of almost look a little bit neglected, some of them, they've got more faults and flaws with them. You can actually just lean into that with your doodling to put, you know, add to your elements onto there, which is quite nice. And we can add that line of the back of his head back in and try and draw in a little bit of the extra details that we missed out when we were stamping, just to make it all sort of complete. Actually, I quite like that. I don't think that's too bad. I'm not sure it's 100% what I was... sorry, Pumpkin's barking at a dog. I'm not sure it's 100% what I was planning on it being, but I do quite like it. And could we go a step further? I'm going to fill in a little bit of this because it's not quite as dark as it could have been. We could give him a bauble earring. I mean, this could be a lady robot as well, but we could give him a bauble earring. So let's just draw a little bauble dangling there as well, just to make it even more festive. What else can we do to make it more festive as well? What about if we draw a candy cane next to the teddy? And you can see I'm... sorry about Pumpkin barking. You can see I'm going with a really sketchy kind of style, because that is the style that this stamp is already drawn in. And I deliberately chose this kind of one because you can be more tentative with your drawing because it's got that sketchy style. If you go with one that's like this and you're trying to add extra elements to it, you've got to be quite purposeful with your lines, because the rest of this isn't very sketchy. It's all perfect lines, which is fine for adding patterns and things too, but when you're not so sure about what you're drawing, it's a bit harder to make it look like it was actually part of the stamp when you're doing that kind of thing. So I'm really sorry about Pumpkin barking. I think it's a squirrel out there. I might also add a holly leaf onto the bauble too, just to you know, really make it look a bit more Christmassy as well. I like the candy cane there, I think that looks good. We could draw over this string a little bit more because it's not quite as dark as it could be. Sounded like she howled then. I don't know if how much you can hear her on the camera. I was trying to do it when she was going to be quiet, but apparently she's in a vocal mood at the moment, so I'm sorry about that. What else could we add? Possibly a present. Do you think we can add like squeeze a present in here or something? I'm quite liking it at the moment, so I don't want to mess it up, but I'm going to go with polka dots on the balloon instead of a present, because I feel like I might mess it up if I try and add a present. So we're going to go with messy polka dots on the balloon. It just gives us something else to add a bit more colour in. I'm going to offset those because there's a seam of the balloon being made out of metal or whatever it's made out of. Pumpkin! Okay, oh sorry, that was a little bit out of camera. I was just adding polka dots onto the balloon up there. So, I think that is all of the Christmassiness that I want to add on to this stamp. So I think that's a pretty good showcase of the gorgeous fine liners from Two Hands, or pigment liners. And obviously, again, if you are going to add different additions to different stamp manufacturers, they're all going to be different points, so you can make use of all of these different thicknesses. For example, a lot of Francoise's stamps from Woodware, you'd probably be wanting to use the 5, 6 and 8 for those, because she often has a thicker line on them that you could, again, you could be a bit sketchy with it and then fill it back in nicely. Or I mean on these ones as well, if you were going to add something onto these, you could use the really, really fine one, add the detail in, and then go back over it with the thicker pen to make it look in the same style as this too. Or you could add sketchy lines with the fine pens coming off of the edge of some of these bits to kind of tie in anything sketchy that you do as well. So yeah, I think that's it for the altering of this. So I'm going to take this stamp off of here, but then I'm going to use a sentiment from that Santa set, which is why I've got that one out, and I'm going to stamp it in my same black ink that I use for colouring with alcohol pens, because I might go onto the floor with it, and I don't want to smudge the sentiment if it's stamped down there. So which sentiment should we use? We've got sending joy and cheer, joy to the world, peace on earth, making spirits bright. I like that, making spirits bright. Okay, so we're going to put that down here, and I like to try and nestle my sentiments into the images so they don't look like they're just an afterthought. It looks like it kind of goes with it. And all of the robot stamps from Andy do have a gorgeous scripty sentiment that goes with them, but obviously it's not Christmas themed. The one that goes with this is that says time together is never wasted, that one says. So we've got that, and then I'm going to ink this up. This is the first time using this stamp, so I might have to stamp it a couple of times, especially with this ink as well. It's got a dog hair going across it, I can see it. That's alright, it adds to the nature of this stamped image, having a little bit of dog hair inking next to the G there. But I really like how that's turned out, actually. So the rest of this video will be sped up of me colouring in this image. I think I'm going to go with alcohol pens, although I could use either, because this is a hybrid ink and the pens work with either water-based or alcohol-based. But I do really like colouring the robots with alcohol pens. I really enjoyed that when I was colouring a load of samples for the launch. So yeah, hope you enjoy the rest of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.